The Salisbury Cathedral in England has sheltered worshippers under the same lead roof since 1258. That's 766 years of continuous service. The oak frame beneath those lead sheets was cut from trees that were already ancient when construction began. Through medieval storms, Renaissance winters, Victorian industrial pollution, and 2 world wars, that roof has done its job without requiring replacement. Down the street, suburban homes built in the 1990s are on their second or third roofs already, with asphalt shingles curling, leaking, and demanding replacement every 15 to 25 years. Modern roofing companies call this normal wear and tear and consider a 30-year roof exceptional. Medieval roofers would have considered 20 years a catastrophic failure, evidence of poor materials or incompetent installation. Something fundamental changed in how we build roofs, and the change wasn't an improvement. Medieval roofs lasted because they were built from materials that improve with age rather than degrade. The primary roofing materials, slate, clay tile, lead, and oak shingles, each had properties that modern substitutes lack. Slate, formed from metamorphic rock compressed over millions of years, is essentially impervious to water. A properly quarried and installed slate tile can last 300 years or more. The key phrase is properly quarried. Medieval quarriers understood that slate has a grain, a direction along which it cleaves cleanly. They split slate along this natural grain, creating tiles that were thin, light, and extraordinarily durable. These tiles would weather, their surface would slightly roughen over decades, but this weathering actually helped them shed water more effectively by breaking surface tension. Clay tiles, common across Mediterranean Europe, were fired at high temperatures that vitrified the clay's surface. This created a glass-like coating that water couldn't penetrate. The tiles were thick, often an inch or more, giving them thermal mass that resisted cracking from temperature fluctuations. Medieval tile makers didn't control their kiln temperatures with digital thermometers, but they understood fire and clay. They knew that tiles fired too quickly would be brittle, while tiles fired slowly at sustained high heat would be dense and strong. The curved shape of many clay tiles, the familiar S-curve of Roman and Spanish tiles, wasn't decorative. The overlapping curved sections created a double barrier against water, with air spaces that allowed any moisture that did penetrate to evaporate before reaching the roof structure below. Lead roofing, used on important buildings like churches and castles, offers a different kind of durability. Lead is soft and malleable, allowing it to expand and contract with temperature changes without cracking. It forms a protective oxide layer when exposed to air, a dull gray patina that protects the metal beneath from further corrosion. Medieval lead workers formed sheets by casting molten lead onto flat sand beds, creating plates that were then hammered and shaped to fit roof contours. The lead sheets were joined with standing seams that allowed movement while preventing water infiltration. Lead roofs require maintenance. The seams need periodic inspection, but the material itself doesn't fail. It just sits there doing its job decade after decade, century after century. Compare this to modern asphalt shingles, which dominate residential roofing in North America. Asphalt shingles are petroleum products, fiberglass or organic felt mats saturated with asphalt and coated with mineral granules. They're cheap to manufacture and easy to install, which explains their popularity. But asphalt is fundamentally unstable. Ultraviolet radiation from sunlight breaks down the petroleum compounds, making the shingles brittle. Temperature cycles cause expansion and contraction that the material can't accommodate indefinitely. The mineral granules that protect the asphalt gradually wash away in rain, accelerating degradation. After 15 to 20 years, the shingles curl, crack, and fail. This isn't a defect, it's the inherent limitation of the material. You can't make asphalt last 300 years. The chemistry doesn't allow it. Medieval roofs were steep. Walk through any preserved medieval town and you'll see roofs pitched at 45 degrees or more, sometimes approaching 60 degrees. This wasn't aesthetic preference, it was hydrological necessity. A steep roof sheds water quickly, preventing it from pooling or penetrating through joints and seams. Water that runs off immediately doesn't have time to find the microscopic gaps that exist in any roofing system. The steeper the pitch, the faster water moves and the less opportunity it has to cause problems. The pitch also matters for snow. On a steep medieval roof, snow slides off before it can accumulate to dangerous weights. This self-cleaning property meant medieval roofs rarely suffered structural damage from snow loads. The pitch did more than shed precipitation. It also ensured that roofing materials overlapped properly. Slate tiles or clay tiles on a steep roof overlap significantly, creating multiple layers of protection. Water hitting the roof encounters not one barrier but 4 or 5, as it must penetrate through multiple overlapping tiles before reaching the roof deck below. Modern roofs, particularly on ranch-style homes and commercial buildings, often have much lower pitches. 4 and 12 pitch, rising 4 inches for every 12 inches of horizontal distance, is common. Some modern roofs are even flatter. This reduces construction costs, less roofing material needed, easier to work on, but it compromises water shedding. On a low-slope roof, water moves slowly. It can pool in slight depressions. It has time to work its way under shingles through capillary action or wind-driven pressure. Modern roofing relies on sealants and underlayments to compensate for poor drainage, but these are temporary solutions. Sealants degrade, underlayments tear, and water finds its way through. The roof structure beneath medieval roofing materials was built to last as long as the materials themselves. Oak was the preferred timber, dense, strong, and naturally resistant to decay. Medieval carpenters selected oak trees carefully, looking for slow-grown timber from dense forests where competition for light produced tight, even grain. They cut the trees in winter when sap was down, then let the wood season for years before use. This slow drying prevented the checking and warping that rapid drying causes. The result was timber that could bear loads for centuries without significant degradation. Medieval roof frames were overbuilt by modern standards. Beams were thicker than structural calculations would require because medieval builders understood that rot, insect damage, and unforeseen loads would eventually affect any structure. By building in excess capacity, they ensured that even after some degradation, the roof would still function. The joints connecting beams were complex mortise and tenon assemblies, often secured with oak pegs rather than metal fasteners. These joints were cut to tight tolerances and locked together mechanically. They didn't rely on adhesives or fasteners that could corrode or fail. The wood itself held the structure together. Modern roof framing uses dimensional lumber, 2x6s, 2x8s, 2x10s, cut from fast-grown plantation timber. These trees grew quickly in open conditions, producing wood with wider growth rings and lower density than old-growth timber. The wood is kiln-dried rapidly to meet construction schedules, sometimes producing internal stresses that cause warping over time. Modern framing is engineered to meet minimum code requirements with little excess capacity. This reduces costs, but leaves no margin for error or degradation. When a modern roof frame is compromised by water damage or insect infestation, failure can come quickly because there's no reserve strength built into the system. Medieval roofing was a specialized trade that required years of apprenticeship. A journeyman slater or tiler had spent a decade learning his craft, understanding not just how to lay tiles, but why certain techniques worked and others failed. This knowledge was practical and empirical, learned through observation, trial, and correction. A medieval roofer knew how much overlap was needed for a given roof pitch, how to cut tiles to fit valleys and hips, how to integrate flashing around chimneys and dormers. This wasn't written in manuals, it was transmitted person to person, master to apprentice. The installation pace reflected this expertise. Medieval roofing proceeded slowly and carefully. Each slate was examined for flaws, each tile checked for cracks. Bad materials were rejected before installation rather than discovered later as leaks. The work was done by hand with simple tools, hammers, slate cutters, trowels, which required skill but produced precise results when wielded by experienced craftsmen. The roofer could feel how a tile sat, could judge by eye whether a seam was tight enough, could adapt technique to local conditions and specific building requirements. Modern roofing is fast. Crews can strip and replace an entire residential roof in 2 or 3 days. This speed is possible because asphalt shingles are designed for rapid installation. They're standardized, lightweight, and attached with nail guns rather than individual fasteners. But speed sacrifices quality. With pressure to complete jobs quickly, corners get cut. Valleys aren't properly flashed, underlayment tears and isn't replaced, nail placement is sloppy. Many modern roofers are laborers rather than craftsmen, trained in basic installation techniques, but lacking deep understanding of water management and building science. When problems emerge years later, The crew has moved on to other jobs, and the homeowner bears the cost of failure. Medieval roofs cost more initially, but delivered value over centuries. A property owner investing in a slate or tile roof understood they were making a permanent improvement, something their grandchildren would benefit from. The high upfront cost was justified by the elimination of replacement costs. Over a 300-year lifespan, even an expensive medieval roof cost less per year than cheap modern alternatives that require replacement every generation. Modern economics work differently. Developers building homes for sale want to minimize initial costs, not life cycle costs. A cheap asphalt roof reduces the purchase price, making the home more marketable. The buyer who will pay for replacement in 20 years isn't part of the calculation. Financing structures reinforce this thinking. Mortgage terms of 15 or 30 years don't extend to the roof's second replacement cycle, so long-term durability has no immediate financial value. The result is a system optimized for initial affordability rather than enduring quality. Medieval roofs lasted centuries because they combined durable materials, intelligent design, skilled installation, and economic systems that valued longevity over initial cost. Slate and tile naturally resist water and weathering. Steep pitches shed water before it can penetrate. Overbuilt oak frames provided structural resilience. Skilled craftsmen installed everything correctly, and property owners invested in quality because they expected their buildings to serve multiple generations. Modern roofs fail quickly because we've reversed every one of these priorities. We use petroleum products instead of stone, reduce pitches to save money, frame to minimum standards, install in haste, and optimize for purchase price rather than life cycle value. The result is roofs that barely outlast their warranties, creating recurring costs that seem normal only because we've forgotten what normal once meant. The knowledge of building roofs that last still exists, in the medieval structures that continue to function, in the techniques preserved by traditional craftsmen, in the materials that haven't changed. What's missing is the will to apply that knowledge and the economic structures that would make it profitable to do so.